Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aisha and you're watching Samar News. Here are today's headlines. President Donald Trump has said the United States would always support NATO, adding that Russia and China only fear the alliance as long as Washington remains part of it. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said the US would stand by NATO even if others would not. The comments come amid rising tensions after US threats toward NATO member Denmark over Greenland. Allies, including France and Germany, are working closely on a plan on how to respond should the United States act on its threat to take over Greenland, as Europe seeks to address US President Donald Trump's ambitions in the region. A US military seizure of Greenland from a long-time ally Denmark would send shockwaves through the NATO alliance and deepen the divide between Trump and European leaders. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said the subject would be raised at a meeting with the foreign ministers of Germany and Poland later in the day. The White House has said that President Donald Trump is discussing options for acquiring Greenland, including potential use of the US military, in a revival of his ambition to control the strategic island, despite European objections. The White House said in a statement that Trump sees acquiring Greenland as a US national security priority, necessary to deter our adversaries in the Arctic region. Greenland has repeatedly said it does not want to be part of the United States. Caracas and Washington have reached a deal to export up to $2 billion worth of Venezuelan crude to the United States, a flagship negotiation that would divert supplies from China while helping Venezuela avoid deeper oil production cuts. The agreement is a strong sign that the Venezuelan government is responding to Trump's demand that they open up to US oil companies or risk more military intervention. US President Donald Trump has said he wants interim President Delcy Rodriguez to give the US and private companies total access to Venezuela's oil industry. Meanwhile, global oil prices slipped as the United States said it persuaded Venezuela to divert crude away from China. China condemned the move as bullying, saying it violates international law and harmed China's legitimate interests. The Foreign Ministry spokesperson also stressed that China-Venezuela energy cooperation is lawful and protected under international law. The United States has seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker after a more than 2-week pursuit across the Atlantic. The tanker, linked to Venezuelan oil exports, was being shadowed by a Russian submarine and had earlier refused US Coast Guard boarding. This is probably the first time in recent memory that the US military has seized a Russian-flagged vessel. US European Command said the vessel was seized for violating US sanctions. The move follows Washington's crackdown on Venezuelan oil shipments and comes days after US forces seized President Nicolás Maduro in Caracas. US President Donald Trump's administration has put 25 more countries on a list of nations whose citizens could be required to post bonds of up to $15,000 to apply for entry into the US. The list mostly included countries from Africa, Latin America, and South Asia. The policy for the newly added nations will go into effect on January 21st and also included Venezuela. Applicants must agree to the terms of the bond through the US Treasury Department's online payment platform. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says allies have yet to give clear, legally binding security guarantees against future Russian aggression. In an audio message to journalists, he said partners show political will, but firm commitments are still missing. Zelensky added he hopes to meet US President Donald Trump soon to seek clarity. Iran's top judge has warned protesters there will be no leniency for those who help the enemy against the Islamic Republic, while accusing Israel and the US of pursuing hybrid methods to disrupt the country. Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has vowed not to yield to the enemy. Chief Justice Gholam Hossein Mohseni Ejei, the head of Iran's judiciary, was quoted as saying by state media that, following announcements by Israel and the US president, there is no excuse for those coming to the streets for riots and unrest. Meanwhile, as protests continued in the streets of Abdanan in Iran's southwest Wednesday evening, Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah, urged the country's armed and security forces to side with protesters, calling on them to protect citizens rather than fire on them. In a video message, Pahlavi also called for renewed nationwide chants this week. On the other hand, President Masoud Pezeshkian has ordered security forces not to crack down on economic protests, stressing a distinction between peaceful demonstrators and armed rioters. Iran has executed a man accused of spying for Israel, naming the defendant as Ali Ardestani. The Iranian judiciary's media outlet said the death sentence for the crime of espionage in favor of the Mossad intelligence service by providing the country's sensitive information was carried out after approval by the Supreme Court and through legal procedures. Japan has called China's ban on dual-use exports for its military absolutely unacceptable amid a looming threat of broader curbs on vital rare earths in an escalating dispute between Asia's top two economies. Dual-use items are goods, software, or technologies that have both civilian and military applications, including certain critical minerals essential for making drones and chips. Japan's top government spokesman said a measure such as this, targeting a country, differs significantly from international practice. The leader of Yemen's Southern Transitional Council, Aidaros al-Zubaydi, has failed to board a plane set to take him to Riyadh and fled instead to an unknown destination. Zubaydi was set to travel to Saudi Arabia days after Yemen's government said it had asked Riyadh to host a forum on the southern issue. The Saudi-backed coalition in the country said a flight carrying a large number of senior leaders of the separatist group departed after a delay of more than 3 hours without Zubaydi and with no information on his whereabouts. That's all for now. For more updates, visit www.samar.tv. Thank you for watching Samar News.